Hey everyone, today I wanted to share my review of The Sims 4 Lovestruck. At first I was not sure if I should, but with EA paying Game Changers additional money, I believe it's like $100 specifically, just to review the pack, I figured the perspective of a non-game changer could be nice. Personally, I was very surprised by Create a Sim. The marketing, at least for the expansion, made it seem very much so that this was like EA's attempt of doing like a Wicked Whims, a more adult-style kind of expansion pack, which by no means is bad, and I know several people will enjoy that kind of a thing, but personally, since it's not really my thing, I was very nervous about what kind of things we'd see in cast. I figured it'd be very risque, and just kind of like what you'd see in a nightclub, or maybe even like a burlesque kind of show, and it's just, I'm not going to use that kind of stuff if that's how it was, for like 9 out of 10 of my Sims, to say the least. Thankfully, the actual Create a Sim we got this time around is phenomenal. The hairs that we get for both masculine and feminine, absolutely stellar. The outfits have a nice array of palettes. We also have a lot of, even on the more risque kind of clothing, they even have options that are more conservative or just not as showy. And they come in amazing color swatches, a lot of floral patterns as well. If I'm being honest, I do love a floral pattern. That added in with the fact that there's also a good chunk of butterfly things just kind of gives it more of a fairy vibe, or a fairies are coming vibe, which obviously I'm gonna enjoy as someone who loves fairies. The biggest surprise, however, is probably that masculine framed Sims get a great amount of items this time around. We've got a lot of variety, and they also get some nice florals, which doesn't happen all the time, and considering the fact that most of the time masculine frame Sims really don't get crap when it comes to Create a Sim, that is honestly a huge feat. Not to mention, if you also kind of like the 70s styles, which I always have, both frames get some really nice bell-bottom jeans in a couple different styles, and I do love some bell-bottom jeans. The feminine frame Sims have this really pretty kind of crop top jacket, which I know we got a lot of crop tops, but the bell-bottom jeans I mentioned actually have a high-waist variant that goes perfectly with it, and you don't even see the belly if you don't want to. And of course, just like they showed us in the trailers and the marketing, there are some risque clothing options that do look good, and they definitely fit the vibe if you kind of want a burlesque show or just something more risque, or just sexy, so to speak, if you're doing a bedroom thing with your Sims. Plus, of course, they've got that box of costumes and all of those fun little costume bits for that they've also showed us previously. So because of all of that, I honestly believe this might be the best Create a Sim we've gotten out of any pack in the entirety of The Sims 4, so I'm gonna have to give it a full-on 10 out of 10 for the Create a Sim aspect itself. The gameplay side of it, however, is unfortunately very, very lackluster. As I've mentioned in a previous video, the main draw and feature of Lovestruck is that kind of romantic dynamic system that is an expansion that we saw from Growing Together, but now it is applied specifically to any Sims that are dating or romantically involved, instead of just being oh, you can only get it if you're married or if it's someone blood or adopted related to you, which honestly it does kind of spice it up a little bit. Your Sims will interact differently, just autonomously on their own based on that. Some socials will be more positive or more negative based on that as well, but you don't see as much of a impact from that because of their other system that they added in, the romantic affection itself. If it's fine, if it's high, if it's bad, that kind of a thing that we kind of see play out as well in their promotional materials, in their trailers and marketing, where, if I give my Sim a gift, and my Sim doesn't like gift giving, they're going to have a lower kind of satisfaction compared to me. They'll have a slightly higher satisfaction because I'm engaging in my Sim's love language, which is the act of gift giving. This system kind of is supposed to allow, in a way, for a bit of a one-sided relationship, but I will admit that it also kind of hinders the romantic dynamic system they added in. Because if you have very steamy kind of lovers, then the Sim is naturally going to want to try and autonomously interact in being more flirtatious and physically intimate. And sometimes even I've had it happen where they would just go to woohoo on their own. I don't know if that's common for other people or not, But if their partner does not like physical intimacy or does not like flirtation as like a love language, which seems kind of weird to not like those things unless you are like an aromantic, which of course is obviously fine, but it seems weird that those options can randomly generate in Sims, whether they might even appear on Sims who are not set up that way. For instance, imagine a Sim who is fully pansexual, open to all experiences, but then they have been randomly generated by the game to have it to where they are against woohooing, physical intimacy, and flirtation on their love languages. So even though, like, in their sexual orientation category, it will say that yes, they are into all of these things, they are open for that, their actual turn on and turn off kind of like emotional, like love language bits are saying that no, they're actually more like aromantic, asexual, which makes things kind of tricky and confusing, especially if one of those Sims tries to, or you had planned for those Sims to kind of set up like a steamy relationship, and that's just how it happens. Like, they're going to autonomously try and engage in those things, but then it's going to make one Sim have such a bad romantic satisfaction that they are going to want to leave the relationship or end things. And it's just like, what? Like, in my opinion at least, if you have a certain sexual orientation set up to where you are not into woohooing with anybody, then it should automatically be set to where you are turned off by woohoo in the romantic satisfaction. And vice versa, if you're not set up to have that system, a random Sim should not be generated that's like against woohooing and their romantic satisfaction when technically in their sexual orientation page they do want it, and that's part of like how they're set up. So I think these systems contradict each other a lot, and it was not very well thought out, which unfortunately ends up causing the main feature and focus of this expansion pack to be redundant and not work out at all, considering you have to physically set up the desired romantic dynamic that you want, or I guess you could let the game figure that out for you, but then you also have to kind of figure out, like, okay, what is this Sim's specific romance language kind of things? Like, do they really like flirtation or not? Because if they don't like flirtation, but they're in a romantic dynamic that is all about and are focused on flirtation, then that relationship is not going to work out and it's just going to flop. Which, this could be a nice, like, storytelling bit, but at the same time, the issue with this is that the game will randomly assign new Sims or other Sims what their love languages are. So unless you specifically are setting up each Sim individually to have love languages that you want or that you can kind of vibe with, then they are most likely going to end up like breaking things off or having massive issues, and it's not going to play out how you expect it to. It's not going to be the story that you want either. And it could give you a little bit more of a dynamic storytelling because, oh, this Sim that your Sim likes, maybe they don't actually like what you want that Sim to have, so you gotta find somebody else. But most of the time, it's gonna end up being a huge, like, conflict of interest or a giant issue that you're gonna combat constantly if you really want this Sim to end up being, like, the long-term partner or part of, like, your polycule or whatever storyline you want. Like, you're gonna have to go into the cast systems for that Sim, almost guaranteed, to set it up how you want, and that kind of sucks, and I wish that they had designed the systems better to interact off of each other instead of how they currently work, which brings us to the fact that the entire turn-on and turn-off system is locked behind this expansion. Now, when Dream Home Decorator introduced likes and dislikes, that was base game, which was great because it meant every other pack could reasonably and would reasonably add things to it, they could expand on it, and so on. I mean, it took them a while to probably get all the new likes and dislikes that they were making added into the system. Like, half the time if we got a new pack, the music station would not be likable or dislikable, but now pretty much all of that is in the likes and dislikes. Turn on and turn offs, however, being fully tied to Lovestruck is not good, because that means that like 90% of the time, if a new thing comes out, like maybe a new hair color, or maybe just like a new type of clothing, they're not going to come back and update the turn on and turn off system because it's pack specific, so they're not going to think, oh, let's update this because it took them forever for likes and dislikes. Why would they go back and update a small feature, so to speak, in the grand scheme of things that a lot of people might not even have? And that just, it's messed up. Speaking of messed up, this game has personality attraction and physical attraction, apparently, in its turn-ons and turn-offs. But then, we only actually get 5 different turn-on and turn-off categories, 3 of which are most likely their physical aspect, and all that we get for physical stuff, the color of your hair, the color of your outfit, and your outfit style. And sure, like the kind of clothes someone wears style-wise might make them appear a bit more attractive, but that's not really like a physical characteristic. The only physical characteristic there are the hair colors, which effectively means all you can really do if you have like an age range in mind that your sim might be attracted to is to like or dislike gray hair, which would maybe cut elders out, assuming they've not dyed their hair, and that's kind of crazy, considering that if you open up the dang app that came with Lovestruck, the Cupid's Corner, your sim can physically select an age range that you like or that you want. So why is that not even an option for physical attraction? And while I wasn't expecting it to be a turn-on or a turn-off anyhow, the fact that fitness or fatness of a sim is kind of sort of a turn-on or a turn-off, but it's considered a personality trait, as if that sim likes fitness or if they have a high fitness skill, that's a personality attraction. That's a really weird way to kind of include it but kind of not, and it's just like, what the hell? Not to mention things like glasses or beards or body hair, none of that is included as a turn on or a turn off. And considering just how many different categories we have in CAS with The Sims 4 and how revolutionized the creative sim aspect has been of this game compared to past iterations, why does it have the absolute least amount of things that you can potentially have as a turn on or a turn off? I mean, heck, in The Sims 2, we had a full list of things for turn ons and turn offs. You could select 2 turn ons, 1 turn off, and they are things like cologne for if they had good hygiene, stink if they had bad hygiene at the time, fat sims, muscled sims, formal wear, swimwear, underwear, facial hair, glasses, do they have makeup, do they have a full face paint on, are they wearing jewelry, are they unemployed? Of course, their hair color is there as an option still, as well as some different skills, which that kind of stuff is in The Sims 4, but The Sims 2 at least also had vampire sims, robots, plant sims, werewolves, zombies, and you could like or dislike any of these. It also had witches, if you were turned on or turned off by a witch. But yet we're not getting that cross-compatibility either in The Sims 4 to be like, oh, I'm not turned on by aliens, or I'm not turned on by a spellcaster, but give me those mermaids. Oh yeah, why are these not options at all? And it feels like The Sims 2 had far more options than The Sims 4 does in that aspect, which is crazy. Not to mention, why can things like underwear and swimwear be a turn-on or a turn-off for you in The Sims 2, but not in The Sims 4? You would think if outfit type is a turn-on in The Sims 4, why would the specific outfit you're wearing not also be a turn-on or turn-off? Maybe your sim is really attracted to high-class sims who almost always wear a formal outfit. Or maybe you want a sim who is really, really turned on by sims in lingerie and their underwear. Why is that not an actual feature within this game when it's been in the past? Beyond that, we have the new romance skill, which is kind of cool, I guess, but also kind of not at times. It just makes it to where it's a lot harder to form a loving relationship or form a, woohoo situation, if that's kind of what you want, through that, romance bar. Specifically, when you have lower romance and the higher you go, the easier it becomes to do that, of course. So that kind of dynamic is nice. It makes me think of whenever they initially said that they're going to give us a woohoo skill for The Sims 4, but then that never came and that never happened. So I guess at least we have this, and it's a 10-level skill instead of a 5-level skill, but it is kind of weird to get used to, having to be oh, now my sim just really can't get a date at all, it seems at first, which is kind of funny, I guess, but Honestly, the best part about the gameplay in this expansion isn't even main things you do in the game. It is a combination of the base game update with the jealousy system for if you want to have polyamory, or if you're cheating on your sim in that storyline, and your sim is okay, well, you're hurting my feelings, you're breaking our relationship, trust, and boundaries, I'm gonna bounce. That's good gameplay, but it's base game now, so it's hard to for sure say yes, this is a Lovestruck specific feature. And then we have the other side of that, where similar to parenthood or growing together, you can get pop-ups in your game if you break up with a sim, and they might be oh my god, I want you so bad, we need to get back together, even if you just broke up with them, which does add a nice dynamic and a nice bit of flavor and more storytelling. You just dumped this one man because he's such a POS, but then he calls you back and he's trying to get you back. That does kind of, enrich the storyline, I won't lie, but when that's the only real solid gameplay of the expansion pack, it doesn't hit well. And so for me, I'm gonna have to give this expansion like maybe a 2 out of 10 for gameplay itself. The wall itself, however, I think is also amazingly done. All 3 of the neighborhoods we get are unique and different. We've got a main city vibe, kind of a downtown park area, and then like a nice rural suburb section, which is where you most likely will live if you make a brand new household and it's a single sim. At least that's how it was for me in my game. I do like that like kind of starter suburb neighborhood is very big. It has a skating rink to skate around in. It's got the hotel in it. Like you can go off and like either just sleep for a night or do a little bit of woohoo in the hotel with a date if you've got one with you. It's got a nice walkable like park that leads to like a nice fancy monument with butterflies on it that I kind of like. I don't know for sure if this is the case or not, but I have heard that if you do not have Snowy Escape, you cannot actually click on the message board to do an automated walk or like nice relaxing like pace around the pond in that park, which really sucks. It's something I have to do more of a deep dive into to test for sure if that was just an early access only thing, or if that's something where like for sure without Snowy Escape you cannot have your Sims go on an automated walk. But since I do have Snowy Escape, it is a nice feature. I do like that, like most worlds, it has a swimmable area, especially because if I want to play a mermaid, I want to be in any town and get to be in the water. Unfortunately, this town has a very, very, very small pond in comparison, and it's in this like suburb neighborhood. It's not bad, and it's in the middle of like the walkable kind of section. I know some people don't like having the bigger neighborhoods. Personally, I love them. I hardly ever decide to travel off my home lot to go somewhere else. Or if I go to a new lot, I don't like to always like leave it that quickly. So I will often have my Sims family if I can. Most of them might be in the house, but I'll play 1 or 2 Sims. They'll go out of the house to do something in the town, or call a friend, like walk around the town, do an activity if it's there. So the fact that there's like a skating area, and there's a walkable trail, there's some water to swim or fish in, and there's a hotel, like, oh, you're playing like a teen sim or something, and they've just had like a really bad fight with their parents. They run away, so to speak, and you have them stay the night in the hotel. Like I do love those options for gameplay. In the other neighborhood, which is kind of the downtown park, we have another pond, which is fishable. You cannot swim in it though, which is kind of stupid, but it's in the shape of a heart. There's a nice kind of pretty hedge made. There's lots of benches to sit on and get that new interaction of like just kind of gazing at the stars together from sitting on the bench, which is kind of cute. And it's definitely a city vibe that we don't really have yet with how like flowery it is, but also urban. I do honestly really enjoy the look of the neighborhood. There are also a lot of food stalls like we saw in Tamarang, and gift shops like we saw in Tortosa for flowers or chocolate that you can buy. So there's a lot of like clickable and interactable stalls, so you could be on a date and walk around like, ooh, let's buy some food, or let's buy some flowers or some chocolates, or maybe you want to do like a Mother's Day event kind of thing or something like that in your game, and you have your child sim buy flowers and you can give them to your mother or something. Like that's kind of a cute, nice, sweet way to go about it. And I do love all the clickable objects, because again, I just enjoy having a bigger neighborhood and more interactable things to do if I want to kind of have a semi-open world vibe and have my family be doing different activities without having to travel through loading screens. Then that takes us to the final of the 3 neighborhoods, and it's definitely a more downtown, like heart of the city vibe, very city heavy. It has the 2 penthouse lots there, a gym, and a like nightclub by default. There is also a decent number of like vendor stalls that I'd mentioned before. There's also a nice like fountainy kind of piece of art, and even a cozy kind of tucked away like grassy plant kind of seating area that reminds me of like a fancy restaurant in the city near where I live, where you just kind of like go out on the patio and sit there and have a good time. Of course, you have to bring your own items in the Sims version of that, but I still enjoy seeing it, and I do love how much it feels like a city in this specific district. Also, I forgot to mention that in the kind of downtown Parktown area, there is a really pretty butterfly fountain, and it works very similar to the fountain you get in romantic garden stuff. You can sit on it, you can wish on it, that kind of a thing, which is a nice feature. Overall, though, I think one of my favorite things about this world is that in each neighborhood section, there are these like bus stop benches, and if you don't want to hit M to travel, you can click on the bus stop bench to travel anywhere else, and that's a very nice feature in my opinion. I love that my Sims can click on it and they walk to it and it's like, oh, they're actually being transported by a bus. Am I gonna always use it? No, but I love that it's there, and it reminds me of a feature that is in one of the neighborhoods of Henford, so it's really nice to see. Unfortunately, a lot of the lots in Lovestruck are very small, and there are no 64 by 64 lots, which really does hinder and hurt the world scoring, in my opinion, making it only a 7 out of 10, simply because the lots just are not that big. And honestly, if we're not going to have that big section of lots, or they're not going to be that big, they could at least give us a lot more of those 30 by 20s to kind of compensate the fact that there is no big lot. But they didn't do that. Otherwise, this world would have been a 10 out of 10 for me for sure. And while this last part isn't the biggest issue or deal, I suppose, it does heavily annoy me. One of the collectibles, or really the collectible in this expansion pack, is axolotls. And just like the frogs, if you see them around in the little stumps, you can collect them and they're cute. You can have them as pets and you can breed them, but you cannot sell the axolotls at all, which I know it's because axolotls are an endangered species, but why then can we capture them and have them as pets if the point is that they're an endangered species? That's why we can't sell them. It's an environmental message. In my personal opinion, don't get me wrong, I'd rather have axolotl pets and the option to collect them than not having an option at all. But in my personal opinion, what they should have done is make it to where if you collect an axolotl in the world, you can't sell that one, but if you breed them, you can sell the ones that you've bred, and some of the axolotl variants you can only get through breeding. That also would kind of mimic real-life conservation efforts for axolotls, where they might catch one or two in the wild, they'll breed a bunch, and they'll release half the ones they bred, and sold the other ones to kind of help get more money for the funding for the team to continue to conserve the habitats of these axolotls. So the fact that we cannot sell even the breedable ones kind of just takes away part of what we would have had for gameplay, and also a decent rags to riches challenge. I know it's an environmental thing, but in my opinion, if they're doing the environmental thing, why not go all out and mimic actual real life efforts over axolotls, where the breeded ones are the ones that are able to be sold? There's not much that I have to say about the build by itself. Personally, it kind of gives Bratz dolls vibes with some of the items you get from the Romance Consultant Courier, which I love. And I do love a lot of the more floral and fairy wallpapers, especially the viney one, the tile with that. So I do actually love what we get a lot. And I would say it's probably at least a 7 out of 10 for me. Granted, we don't really get that much of the items compared to other packs to build by. And I know that my personal styles are not what a lot of builders like. Even though I do love the kawaii-esque colors for one of those bars, it's probably my favorite in the entire game. But I digress, my tastes are probably not everyone's. Which honestly then leads us to the fact that this expansion is a 3 out of 10, and the reality is it's a stuff pack amount of gameplay with a huge world, a lot of casts, and a lot of build by, and those are the reasons they're selling it as an expansion pack. If you take away the world, you reduce the cast by half, you reduce the world size to maybe one neighborhood or not having a world at all, and it'd be a $9.99 USD stuff pack, which is crazy considering it's an expansion pack, and you'd want more gameplay in an expansion pack for sure. And in some countries, they've upsold this pack by $10 to $20 in their currencies. It's ridiculous. So it's a 3 out of 10 for me on the whole, but what do you guys think?